Hi, I'm Stacy.
And I am Mark, and this is the Gurus and Game Changers podcast. Welcome in, Gurus. Welcome in, Game Changers. This one's going to be fun. Today's guest is John Moyer. And John, I think, is a great example of a guy who found success on that road not taken that you hear about often. And he did it in what is notoriously an unbelievably difficult industry, live comedy, live performance. He's an award-winning stand-up comic. He's a screenwriter. He's a scriptwriter. And for more than 20 years, he's been on stage making people laugh, making people belly laugh. But he was doing it with jokes written about a life that he himself termed as a deeply dysfunctional one. So ultimately, that was his grind, right? The life kept going, the jokes kept flowing.
Yeah.
And he eventually found himself in a place that's pretty tough, personally, professionally, financially, you name it. And then he asked himself a question, and this is what got me, John. He asked himself a question that I've asked myself, and I think other people have asked, like, is this it?
Yeah.
Like, is this it? Is this
don't
my life?
do
Is
the
this
whole
all there
podcast
is?
now.
No.
We got to ask John some questions too. Okay, Mark.
And it's a pretty common question, but his answer was to pivot, become more successful, have more of what he's always wanted out of life. He became a master hypnotist, and that's really what we want to talk about. And he said it all started right here, right? And that's what this podcast is all about. Yeah. It all started in the head. He changed his mind. And I want to get into that mind because it's probably pretty fascinating. And then we also want to see how you get in other people's minds, because I find that even more fascinating with the whole hypnosis thing. So, John, welcome to the show. Welcome to Gurus and Game Changers.
Welcome, John.
Thank you for having me. I have to say that was probably one of the best intros that I've ever gotten, because you took the information, but you put it together in a compelling, flowing way. So thank you,
John. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm happy to be here. Yeah. So thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Let's dive in.
So fun. So like one of the things we do here and that I love the most is talk about origin stories, because to me it's like when I try to learn about somebody who is a game changer or a guru or whatever, how did they get there? Like, you know, and especially like how did they climb over these obstacles? And I think you're like the perfect person to ask this question. You called your life like dysfunctional.
Yeah.
You know, and I if you don't mind, I'd love to dig into that. Like, you know, how was your family life when you were young? Like, you know, tell me about yourself growing up.
I'd have to say the genesis of probably what drove me early on. Now, my father was a very talented musician. He loved big band music. He played the drums, had his own orchestra, and that was his passion. That was his love. But my father never believed that was something that he could do full-time as a professional career. To my father, that was the hobby. That was the thing you go and do on weekends, but a real man works, 40 hours a week,
totally know
doing a job
about.
that they hate.
Yeah.
And my father actually wound up working for his grandfather's company for the better part of his life. But working for his grandfather's company, I saw how that made my father so miserable on so many levels. There's several times where he had an ulcer from all of the stress. But I early on, I didn't get the musician gene, but I got the entertainment gene. So I was about 12 years old. I discovered my father's Super 8mm movie camera, and I started making movies, home movies, and I was having a lot of fun doing it. And I remember saying to my dad, well, what do you think about, I go and make movies, I go to film school, I do this. And my father said to me, because he was very pragmatic, he just said, I think it's another one of your childish ideas. And that affected me in two ways. Number one, because I wasn't going to wind up like my dad. I wasn't going to be doing something I did not love to do and not be able to follow my passions. And number two, now you just told me I couldn't do something, so screw you. So now I'm going to go out and prove that can be the case. So I went to film school, graduated. While I was in film school, I started doing stand-up comedy. And to me, it was all in the entertainment realm. I loved comedy. I was writing comedy scripts for my classes, and that was the type of genre that I was interested in. So just doing stand-up comedy, it felt like it was all going into the into the same thing. And early on, when I was in my 20s, I could tell that my father had some resistance to that. And, him saying to me, you got to give it some time, pick a period of time. If you haven't made it by then you just go back to the real world or whatever. And I said to my dad, I go, that's the point where they're going to turn the crank and they're lowering my casket into the ground because I'm not going to give this up.
Yeah, yeah.
And then later on, as I began to have success, I had several scripts produced, and I was able to go on and perform. And it was unspoken, but I knew that there was some resentment on my father's part there, which, we later on, everything was resolved before he passed away. But he was that driving force for me to want to go out and say that I can do this. But then, of course, I was my early 40s, and I never cared about being the richest or the most famous. I just wanted to be able to know that I could do something that I loved and be able to support myself and my family and all of that. But I wound up going through a divorce, and I was incredibly dysfunctional in that way because my philosophy was, what we learned in film school is all drama is conflict.
Right.
So there's not going to be any Home Alone movie if the kid's not left home alone and there's a threat of burglars breaking into the house. So I took that paradigm and just applied it to my comedy. So the more drama there was in my personal life, the more conflict, the more I could rant and rage about that on stage and have material that was kind of, original to me in my life. But I was incredibly unhappy personally, going through the divorce and then being the father to two small kids and still dating all of the wrong women. And the dynamic of stand-up comedy, the business model of stand-up comedy really changed in the early 2000s as MySpace came around and the internet came around, because stand-up comedy didn't necessarily become about who the funniest person was. It was who was the most connected person or the most famous person.
Right.
So a lot of clubs were booking comics based on their social media reach, that they could go out and promote themselves. When I was doing it in the 90s, club booked you and then the club was responsible for going out and for promoting the show. But then in the early 2000s, the club started booking people that they knew could go out and promote themselves and get butts in the seats.
Yeah, and it's still that way today. Just quick question. I know you're going to jump in, but back to the origin. So what did your mom think? And do you have any siblings?
I'm the youngest of four.
Okay.
So I've got two older sisters and an older brother. And, I'm the only one that got that, kind of creative gene. Now, my mom was always very supportive. And
See?
I mean, when I was leaving for college, right before that, my mom, she did say this to me. She goes, maybe you should minor in something so you have something to fall back on. And I mean, I was 18 years old at the time, and pretty profound thing to say as an 18-year-old. But I said, Mom, if I'm saying now that I should have something to fall back on, I'm saying that there's not going to be a chance that I could make it. So my whole philosophy was, if you're in a burning building, you just give yourself one way out, and that's the way that you've.
I like that. That's awesome.
That's the burn the ships mentality, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna fight this battle because there's no other choice.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah,
You had pretty good success. I know you opened for Louis Black, Louis Anderson. Who inspired you back then to even get into this? Who was killing it back then? It was Eddie Murphy? I can't remember.
For the 90s, well, for me, for the 90s, I really loved Dennis Miller because I like that
sarcastic,
smart, sarcastic comedy that just you had to think a little bit about. So that was kind of my thing. But at the same time, though, my style was kind of this angry guy complaining about his wife or his kids or all the the drama that was going on there.
Bill Burrish type. Do you remember a joke you can tell us? Like, is there one that?
Yeah, it's so funny because I still have dreams that I'm booked for a show.
Well, today's your show. You didn't know that, huh?
and then I'm like, I don't know any of my jokes, But one of the jokes that it was based on a true story too, was that we wanted to remodel the house, so we hired my brother-in-law to come over, my wife's brother, to come over and remodel the house. And he spends the whole day doing demolition, knocks down a few walls, ripping stuff out. He says, okay, I'll be back tomorrow. We'll start building the whole thing back up. Well, later that night, my mother-in-law calls me to tell me that afternoon, they actually had an intervention with my brother-in-law and convinced him to go to rehab for 6 months. And she goes, so just do what you need to do. I'm like, my house is a wreck. He smokes crystal meth. I'm paying him by the hour. Do you realize how fast he works?
That's good. Oh, I like that.
But I would do that it was much more animated. Like,
yeah,
I
of
would
course.
yell.
I'm sorry. You know what? It's been a really tough week for me. I went to my therapist to get in touch with my inner child, and I found out it wasn't mine.
But that was, it was stuff like that. And that was a true story. The house was a disaster. And then they just felt it was the right time. Like, didn't say anything to me and my wife about it at the time, but they thought it was the right time to, just confront him, send him to rehab. And I'm just like, oh my God, what now? But that was just like one example after the other of anytime there was a conflict, anytime something, came up, something my wife was upset about or something stupid the kids that did piss me off, that's what I wanted to rant about.
Dude, I got to tell you, I watched some of your comedy, and this one joke, I was literally laughing, belly laughing. And it's just going to be hard to hear somebody tell you back your joke in a terrible way, I'm sure.
Give it a try. Give it a shot, Mark.
It was like, I rented this DVD or I rented this CD. I don't even know what it was. Yeah. But it was, they always talk about anti-piracy in the beginning. Like, do not download or just copy, or copy this. You wouldn't shoplift. You wouldn't steal a car. So why would you steal this? And he's like, I got news for you. I've shoplifted.
I've stolen a car.
Stolen a car. Yeah. I'm from Jersey. It's a great line. It was such a great line.
Cool. That's so cool.
Yeah, that's going back a long. That's like 20 years ago.
It still works though. It's still hilarious. Yeah, it's still hilarious.
Now you fast forward to my 40s when I'm divorced. I've got the kids to be responsible for, right. And I'm not necessarily enjoying what I'm doing, right? And so, there were these times on stage that maybe things aren't going as well on stage as you would like them to. And, I'm sitting thinking to myself, like, my God, this is what it's about.
Wow.
This is what I'm doing. I'm standing here in front of this lousy audience. I'm not having fun. What now? So I was unhappy, obviously personally unhappy. And then just when it stopped being fun doing the grind of the stand-up.
Yeah.
So obviously I was in what I call probably the darkest place I had ever been in my entire life, where I just don't know where anything is going, how anything is going to come together, how anything is going to turn around. So I was at an event where there was a series of things happening throughout the day. I was one of the acts that were booked to perform at this event, and the venue that I was in doing my stand-up, it was maybe 60% full, whatever that, it wasn't packed. It was probably about half full. Well, then I didn't realize this. Immediately after me, they had a stage hypnotist. So I'm like, okay, I'm stick around and watch this. So for the venue being, 50, 60% full for me, it was standing room only for the hypnotist. And the audience was engaged. The volunteers were hypnotized and engaged. And then, of course, after the show, he was selling his CDs for Stop Smoking and weight loss. People are coming up, throwing money at him hand over fist to buy this stuff. I was always fascinated about the mind. So I'm like, you know what? I can do that. I know how to be on stage. I know how to improv and work with people. Of course, I just have to figure out how to hypnotize people. So what I wound up doing is I went and I took a stage hypnosis training course. So I was able to get that down. And when I felt I had a show together or, an act put together, and then of course, that goes as, when you're starting to try to hypnotize people, I'm doing like little house parties for friends, I'm just getting a few, right. Hey, come over, let me try to hypnotize you, and, blah, blah, blah. And then doing my first show where another buddy of mine actually rented out a theater and it worked out. People were hypnotized. It was a lot of fun. But I was able to go back to the agents and the bookers and the event planners, all the people that I previously worked with, right, that I had an in with, and said, hey, look, I've got a whole different show now. And then doing that is when things just really skyrocketed for me in just, maybe about 18 months or so. Wow. So instead of driving 12 hours up to some, cowboy bar, doing some hell gig in Montana, being put up in, a Motel 6 by the bar. Now I'm like, people are flying me around the country. I'm like staying in really nice hotels. And, I remember getting a ticket from a client one time. I was like, wow, it was for me and my wife. My wife was coming with me. It was first class. And so things had really accelerated, but now and along the line, I wound up meeting, my current wife, Rochelle, she plays a huge part, in that origin story for me. But the things that I'm like, I've got this ability to hypnotize people and, help them, or do this fun stuff with their mind. Like I can apply this stuff for me. So I began a daily practice of meditation and self-hypnosis. So not only was now my professional life turning around, my personal life was turning around.
Wow.
And
what does that sound like or look like, that self-hypnosis? From a guy who's a master hypnotist. I'm into positive self-talk. I believe it 100%. It's probably, that's a step 1 of step 10 is master hypnosis, hypnotizing yourself. How does somebody listening at home that wants to get better at talking to themselves, what's their first step?
Well, just start to do it. The nice thing about the day and age that we live in now is you have access to so much stuff that is out there online. If it was 20 years ago and you're like, oh, I need some help overcoming whatever, you might look up a hypnotist in the yellow pages, or maybe you're going to go down to the library and see if they've got some tapes or CDs. But now literally you have access to everything right there, just, from, your phone. There's apps, or just, like the platform that I'm primarily on is YouTube. Mm-hmm. You can go to YouTube, and I always tell people there's no right or wrong. There's only what works for you. So you go, okay, I'm looking to deal with stress or, positive mindset or whatever. There are an infinite amount of videos there and different hypnotists, different guided meditations. So I just say, try something, see what you like and see what resonates with you. Right. You go, oh, I like this person's voice. I like the length. I like what they're saying. Great. And then just consistently do that, over and over again. So learning to rewire your mind or retrain your mind, it's like going to the gym. When you walk into the gym, you're not going to be able to, deadlift 450 pounds or, whatever it is right away, but you build up that muscle. And it's the same way with your mind. There was a time I never thought in a million years I could meditate or be hypnotized, till I started little by little being able to do that. And now when I go to meditate, as soon as I'm in that position, immediately I can feel my brainwave shift and my mind goes, okay, this is what this is. This is what we're going to, to do now. So
wow.
If somebody says they can't be hypnotized, it's not true, because it's a natural operational state.
Stop,
I literally
Mark.
just said that before we came on.
But it's just really training your neural pathways, right? So it's just like anything really, else, like affirmations or whatever, telling yourself it is a good day when you're having a bad day, right?
Yeah, that's how you're winding up rewiring your mind and reprogramming your mind. So the thing that I say to people is, how many times have you read a book, you've gone to a seminar, you've taken a course, whatever it is, and you go like, my God, this makes so much sense. If I implement this is going to change my entire life. Mm-hmm. But then, of course, a few days later, a week later, you're back participating in the same old limiting behaviors that you were trying to overcome. And the reason why that is because consciously you go, this makes sense. This is going to change our lives. Subconsciously, the subconscious mind goes, of course this makes sense for everybody else, but not for us, because we're not smart enough, we're not good enough, we're not talented enough. Anything we try does not work out. So if you're going to make that change, consciously you're aware of something that you deserve to do, but you deserve to have that rewired and reprogrammed so your subconscious mind aligns with that, that same thought pattern.
I love that. And I get that. What I sort of wonder about is when you do the group hypnosis. So I don't know if you do as much of that anymore, because I know you're mostly online. Is it is that is real, right?
It is real.
It is real, because I'm sure people have asked you that before.
Yeah. Well, that's why I love so much, when I do corporate events.
Yeah.
Because people will come up to me and we go, we thought this was not real. But then we saw Bob
person?
up there.
Yeah, Bob would
We
never
worked
make
next
that
to
up.
that person every single day. And there's no way he was faking that. There was no way. And now, because, if you see a show, if you go to Vegas, you see a show, a hypnosis show in Vegas, even on the cruise ships, people don't know each other. Right. So they don't know who's up there. Right. Is that person a plan? Is it not real? Blah, blah, blah. But when it's a close-knit group of people, like, a corporation or whatever, where they know, then that's the thing that, that's the difference for them.
The disbelief comes because you pull 15 people out of an audience,
crazy,
sit them on the stage, and immediately you're able to make them do stuff. Like, that blows me away.
It's 115 degrees. That sun is beating down. You can feel the sweat dripping down your neck. It's dripping down the front of your.
Yeah, it's when you're bringing a group of people up on stage, a lot of it in one regard is throwing mud up against the wall and seeing how much sticks. If you're working with somebody one-on-one, there's a feedback loop. You can specifically cater that to that individual. But now when you have a group of people on stage, you're kind of taking a one-size-fits-all approach.
Right.
And there's little things that you can do during the induction. There's certain things that you're knowing what to look for with people, because there are very real responses that somebody gives when they are legitimately hypnotized versus when somebody is trying to pretend to be hypnotized. So you're able to, you're able to work that. So, but in one regard, yes, it is a numbers game. So you get these people up there, and then you're just going to see, who responds. And then from the people that are hypnotized, the people that do respond to that, then at the same time, you're also looking for those individuals that will be the most creative or the most animated. Mm-hmm. Because there might be somebody that's really deeply hypnotized, but for whatever reason, their personality is just such that, they're not as what, we have the individuals that we call the stars of the show, the people that really stand out, that are really imaginative and that are really creative when they participate.
What was a show that you can remember that was the best? Like where you were like, oh my God, like everyone here is super, super hypnotized and super into it.
It's funny because there are different things that stand out, but probably the ones that I think are the most memorable. I had the opportunity to do Salt Lake Comic-Con a few times.
Oh, cool.
So now I'll give you an example. The very first time I was supposed to do it, I was booked, and I think we were set up in a room, and it was like 1,500 people were set up in the room, in the ballroom that we were in. Now I'm thinking, there's no way that we're going to get. How are they going to put 1,500 people on? And then when I was going, I realized I was going up against the William Shatner Symposium. So I had Captain Kirk literally in the next ballroom next to me. And I'm like, how am I going to compete? Nobody's going to come see me when Captain Kirk is next door. Well, then they opened up the doors and the people flooded in.
Whoa.
And it was 1,500 chairs, but standing room only in that ballroom. Now, think about the kind of people that will go to a Comic-Con. They're the people that are imaginative, the people that were, geeks. There's people dressed up in cosplay. Sure. So those are the people that I had on stage. And I think I probably had 30 chairs on stage, and all the chairs are full. I even let some people just kind of sit on the floor on the way. So I had probably, maybe 40 or 50 people to do, and people that were just creative and fun. And that to me was one of the really the coolest experiences as far as performing. There's other certain individual experiences that stand out that, an individual may have had, during a show under hypnosis. I had a woman one time who was a medical doctor. And the suggestion that I gave her was that her belly button was missing. Oh, man. So it was one of these things where, I probably had 10 people on stage and I was giving different suggestions to different people. So it was, these spinning plates all kind of happening on this, the stage at the same time. So I'm on the one side of the stage working, I'm talking to one individual that I gave one suggestion for. Well, I'm hearing people, they're laughing. And of course, I know what's going on. So I look down at the other end, and here's this woman looking under her. She's lifting up her shirt. She's feeling her stomach. She gets up. She starts looking behind the chair. She's looking under the chair. She's asking people around, have you seen my belly button? So I go up and I'm like, what's going on? And she goes, my belly button is missing. And she goes, I am a medical doctor. This is impossible. This can't happen. Wow. But my belly button is gone. So it was just this really interesting dichotomy where the two parts of her were fighting, where it was like, all my training, all my experience, everything that I know, this is impossible. Right. But yet it has happened because the subconscious mind believed that and overrode everything else.
So you're able to do that in like a quick time? Like, so this doctor who's like a doctor and then I don't want you to like reveal all your, things that you do, but like, to me, it's like crazy. It's like, okay, you're talking to her and she's perfectly normal doctor, and then suddenly you say you have no belly button. Like what's the middle part of that? Like what's
well, that would be, obviously that was further into the show where she was already hypnotized. And when I do a show, I probably have, 7 minutes, probably no more than 10 minutes to go through and do, a hypnotic induction. Now, the thing about hypnosis is the further on the show goes, the deeper into hypnosis people are going. So there are certain things, I call it, the light lifting that we know that we can do. There's certain skits that and certain suggestions that I can give to people up front versus at the end of the show, because at the end of the show, they're deeper into hypnosis. So they're able to accept, more, I don't want, not necessarily complicated, but more bizarre, suggestions.
That's right.
But yeah, that's
And is it words? Is it you go through like, okay, now your eyes are feeling tired and you watch the pendulum, or like, is it like?
Yeah, basically, what you're doing is, between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, there's a thing called the critical faculty. And the critical faculty is like the bouncer at a nightclub with a red velvet rope who determines who gets in and who doesn't get in. So, when information comes in, the subconscious mind, that critical faculty, is going to go, okay, we're going to evaluate this. Does this jive with, what we've got going? Okay, we're going to let this in. We're not going to let this in. So what you're doing with the hypnosis is essentially you're distracting that critical faculty. So you're just kind of sneaking into the subconscious mind and being able to do those suggestions. And there's different techniques, things that you do when you're hypnotizing somebody to distract that critical faculty.
I feel like taking the course. I really do.
It's just fascinating.
It's so
and
cool.
It's so hard to understand that it happens that quickly. That's what I still can't wrap my head around. To your point, she's a doctor or whomever is sitting there talking, and then it's like, take a breath, hold that breath, close your eyes when you breathe out. They're gone.
Yeah.
I do that every night, and I'm still present.
It's a little bit longer than one or two breaths, but yeah, within 7 to 10 minutes, you've got, the right group of people. Those people are going to just kind of fall into that category and have it happen.
So how does that transition then to not being able to interact with the people on YouTube? Like, do you it's like an overarching way of helping people to sleep or to stop smoking or?
That's interesting because there's kind of another origin story there too.
Yes.
So the stage hypnosis is taking off for me. And the big thing with, hypnotists, when they're done with their show, they have, back of the room merchandise. So they have their CDs for stop smoking and weight loss and so forth. So now, of course, I'm kind of getting in, I really dove into it hardcore probably 2013. So it's been about 10 years. So initially early on, CDs, people still had CD players, but in a very quick period of time, CD players became obsolete. Everything was digital files for people. Well, if MP3 files, if digital files are going to become a thing, I'm just going to put this stuff on my website. And then I'll just tell people, look, if you want to do this, you can go to my website and buy it, which there's a little bit difference there because there is some excitement that somebody can rush to the back of the room after the show and pick something up. But I was putting them on my website. And at the same time, I thought, well, I'll put some stuff on YouTube. And, maybe people hear my stuff on YouTube, they'll go to my website and they'll buy it.
So how long was that first video you put up on YouTube? Do you know?
Well, yeah, the first video probably it was probably like an hour or so.
Okay.
But now, of course, the YouTube algorithm is all about dialing subsets of subsets of subsets. So what it became was people who were interested in listening to hypnosis to fall asleep. So, and I had seen that there were some videos out there for what they call sleep hypnosis, which were about 8 hours long. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll try an 8-hour one. I'll see what that's like. And that took off. So now my YouTube channel became about people who are interested in meditation. That's one subset or one set. The subset of that is to use hypnosis or meditation to fall asleep. And then the other subset of that was people who were interested in hypnosis and meditation to fall asleep and then stay asleep and have that play for the entire 8 hours.
As you experience your spirit guides, feed your soul, and you are aware of how your spirit guides educate your mind with wisdom.
So for me, the YouTube, doing YouTube, I love the fact that I'm able to be creative. I'm able to write and use my film and video skills for that. But then at the same time, it's a very different experience, being on stage because I have that immediate connection with, the individuals.
Well, that's one of my questions. Like,
Yeah.
when you have people on stage, are you like, I know, I'm going to make them a chicken? Or do you think about, like, ahead of time what you're going to do, or does it just pop into your head?
There's stuff that, I've got the idea of, the show planned out. I know the structure of the show and how it's going to go. And now obviously I might need to change some things up or mix some things up, a little bit differently. But as you go in, you deserve to be present to realize, okay, this person would be good to give them this suggestion for 2 skits away,
Right.
or whatever. You just have to know to match
It's like
the
improv.
individuals.
Yeah, it's like improvisation. Yeah.
Because you could have hypnosis isn't necessarily a one size fits all. Some people go under deeper, some people go under faster. So when you've got a group of 10 or 20 people on the stage, that's the thing, being observant to go, okay, when I get to this skit, it's going to be really good for this person. Or maybe because you do groups stuff with the group, and then you do individual stuff, and I think, well, this person seems like they're a little bit more lightly hypnotized. Maybe I'm not going to go out of my way to directly engage with them or give them something that I think might be too much of a stretch for the level of hypnosis that they're in right now.
That's wild stuff. I was going to ask about this energy. So, like, one of the things you said, that hypnosis can work not only for the physical world, but also our energetic world. And I was just curious, is that what you're talking about in terms of, like, helping people's psyche, like what you did with yourself? Or, like, tell me a little bit about that.
Well, what I say, there's 2 types of people. There's Newtonian physics people who believe, okay, if I need to do something or change something, I physically have to take this action and interact with this physical situation to be able to have a certain outcome. And then there's what I call the law of attraction people, who come from that space of energy, that say, okay, if I'm resonating at a certain frequency or I'm in a certain emotional state, that's going to go out there into the ethers, out into the cosmos, and it's going to energetically call forth a situation or circumstance for me. So I always say that hypnosis can apply to both of those people. So if you're a Newtonian physics person, you're like, okay, I can use hypnosis to change the way that I think, so I change the way that I behave, so I'm now interacting within the physical world in a different way. If you're a law of attraction person, then what's happening is then you're now rewiring that, your subconscious mind. And so now you're naturally, now, since you're thinking differently, you're now feeling differently, and that energy is going to resonate out there in to the universe. So whichever you subscribe to, whichever camp you're in,
I do.
Then whichever camp somebody subscribes to, hypnosis is going to be able to benefit you. I think for those individuals that subscribe to the law of attraction philosophy, which, looking at quantum physics and so much now, there's a lot of things that start to seem, to make more sense in that regard when you're talking about quantum entanglement and things like that. Because the thing is the the conscious mind, if you put it in computer terms, the conscious mind processes anywhere from like 7 to 10 bits of information per second. The subconscious mind is processing something like 20 million bits of information per second. So, there's a lot more operating on a subconscious level there that's going to condition somebody or have somebody operate. So if you can,
Have you seen that, Mark, The Law of Attraction? The movie.
Not the movie. I'm familiar with the law of attraction.
Yeah.
I would say I'm 60-40 Newtonian. I used to be 90-10, so I'm making progress on the energy field. Let me ask you a question. I've never had the opportunity to talk to a master hypnotist before, so I don't want to waste this opportunity.
Okay, go.
I have to know. I know, like, you can leave suggestions in people if they're trying to stop smoking, right? And I say that, I don't know that that's actually what happens. You don't leave a suggestion in them. But to help them lose weight, stop smoking, sleep better, whatever. But has anybody ever been stuck and you couldn't get them out?
No.
Ever? That's a myth.
Getting stuck in hypnosis is a myth. Yes. And, when I go up in front of audiences, when you're giving the pre-talk, you want to let them know what's going to happen. You want to encourage them to come up on stage. So you also want to dispel any fears or myths, that sort of thing. And one of them is, no, you're not going to get stuck in hypnosis. And I typically don't The only groups that I might say that in front of is probably a high school or a college group. And the reason why I would go out of my way to stress that is because you may have a high school kid or a college kid who wants to be a smart ass and think, oh, I'm going to totally hijack this thing. I am going to act like I'm stuck in hypnosis, because I've had that happen to, buddies of mine where, somebody's panicking, they're stuck, and it's like, no, they're faking it. And then of course they were able to, be able to bluff the kid, coming out of, acting that. So yeah, you're not going to, it doesn't happen. So I will tell that to high school kids or college kids. Can't get stuck. It's impossible. It's never happened. If you were to hypnotize somebody and just walk away, one of two things would happen. They'd either fall asleep, like they were taking a nap, or they just wake up and come out of hypnosis on their own. But nobody's getting stuck there.
That's
good question.
fascinating.
That's a good question. Yeah, I never even thought about that. So in terms of like your own self-development and your own like self-hypnosis, like I'm just curious to find out from you, are there books you're reading now? Are there, like what's next for you? Like where are you going from here? Like I feel like if I were you, I might be able to like reach different levels of consciousness, or like, do you know what I mean? Or help like groups of people, or like, or not, just like do what you're doing and be with your children. Like, so how do you see that?
I really have enjoyed what I've been doing on YouTube, because my content isn't, it's not your standard stop smoking or weight loss or that sort of thing. It's, what maybe one might refer to as more, new agey. It's positive energy. It's, connecting with your higher self, those type of things. So to me, it's kind of being able to put a modality out there that people can kind of come into consciousness and raise, their vibration, raise the, the quality of their lives. So that's what I'm passionate about. Now, the thing is one of my most popular videos was sleep hypnosis to meet your spirit guides. And of course, it's always very interesting to hear from, the born again Christians and the holy rollers, I mean, the comments, this is demonic, this is Satan worshiper, blah, 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 blah.
No, it's not, guys.
But exactly.
Let's tell them right now, this is not demonic.
But that's actually a whole other discussion about religion, thinking that just hypnosis, not even spirit guides, but hypnosis is satanic. But my approach is okay, am I coming from a space that somebody is really going to have this experience where some spirit or angel appears in their room? Well, if somebody's looking to connect with their spirit guide, why would that be the case? Well, maybe they've got some stress, they've got some stuff that they're looking to overcome, they're looking for some answers. It's probably everyday challenges that somebody is experiencing. Right. Now, when you experience hypnosis, your mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's not. So it's like a dream, right? How many times you have a dream and it's like the most bizarre dream, but yet in the dream, you just kind of like, okay, this is real, this is happening. So it's the same thing under hypnosis. So if you hypnotize somebody and you're saying, okay, your spirit guide is here, and your spirit guide is encouraging you, you can feel the energy of your spirit guide helping you to be able to rise above this challenge. It's just the suggestions and the information that are going into somebody's subconscious mind are pretty standard, everyday suggestions to help people overcome their everyday, challenges. It just so happens to be that the mind goes, okay, I believe the spirit guide is here, and the spirit guide is making me stronger. The spirit guide is reducing my stress. The spirit guide is helping me figure out the answers that I'm looking for. When of course it's their own mind that is empowering them, making them and coming up, with the answers. So that's the kind of thing that I just, I love doing, and that, I'm passionate about.
And you're going to do more of that. But then for yourself, like, is there the books you're reading? Like, so we ask these questions, we have sort of a lightning round at the end where we say, like, what's on your bedside table? Are you books or pictures?
My son just gave me a really good book for Father's Day called Being by Rick Rubin, the music producer. And it's just about, and it's interesting because it's not, you could just open it up and you could read a little section. It's just him kind of free flowing all of these different thoughts that he has about being creative and at the same time being connected to, what one might refer to as source energy.
What is one thing that no one, I mean, maybe your wife, but no one else knows about you that you've never told anyone on any interview or anywhere?
Maybe that I've never told an interview or anywhere.
Okay,
I have a really kind of dark, dirty sense of humor.
That's fair.
See, so it's always a good answer.
It's funny because it bleeds over into, not bleeds over, I guess, but there's this persona, obviously, when people are hearing you.
Close your eyes. Let me tell you a dirty joke.
There is this persona, and that's a part of me, but I'm a much broader person than that. And one of the ways that early on when my wife and I first met, my wife is very sapiosexual, right? So she loves a smart mind. So naturally, why would she not, not be attracted by me?
Wait, can I just roll it back? What's sapio? What's sapiosexual
you're
for our listeners?
Attracted to intellect or intelligence.
Thank you. Sorry.
So
I might not be the only one who didn't know that.
when my wife and I, when we were dating, if a guy had texted her, there were typos in the text, or if he did some weird abbreviation, it was you're exactly right. It was a non-starter for her.
I love it.
When we're texting, and then all of a sudden, I'm wooing my wife with the word, she's impressed. I can actually articulate a sentence. I'm grammatically correct, but then I would send her dirty limericks. I would text her dirty limericks. And she absolutely loved that. And I still do it to, this day, she's away at a women's retreat this weekend. So, I'm going to, but she's been out with friends sometime. I'll get a text from her. She's like, send me a dirty limerick right now. I want to show my friends what you can do.
Nice.
I would love to see
make
some
it a
dirty limericks.
Copy us on those.
I would like to see one of those.
Why not? We'll have a whole John Moyer
they're
dirty
very
limerick
special.
page.
They're special. You can't. Yeah. So go ahead. Now you can ask your question, Mark.
Well, so we wanted to wrap it up. We wanted to thank you for coming. We want people to know how to reach you. Where do you want to send them? What's your YouTube page? How can they book you?
If they go to johnmoyer.com, then that's got the links of where I'm at everywhere, all over the place. If you just go to YouTube, if you look up John Moyer Hypnosis, you'll find me right there. So YouTube's the primary platform where people can like and subscribe and comment and all that stuff.
Have you written a book that we can get out there, or are you going to?
That's actually one of the things my wife and I have been talking about doing, because my wife is she started also a hypnotist, but she started, because my wife was always great. People would always go to my wife for advice. So she was the sage of wisdom. And so she started to do hypnosis, and she'll work with people one-on-one. And, of course I go out and do, the broad stuff, but everything that, the themes of my content on YouTube, I attribute so much of that to the things that my wife introduced me to, how our lives changed when we met and came together.
I love this love story. This is wonderful.
That could be a whole other,
I mean, I actually want to talk to her too.
After the satanic demonic one, we'll do that one. Hey, if you're both hypnotists, you must have the most well-behaved children.
That's a great question. Do you hypnotize your kids?
It works
without them knowing.
It works out great. Combined, we have 6 kids. She's got 4. And I've got 2. All of them are grown except for one. My youngest is 16. He's home. But I was, when I first started, you go back 10 years ago, there were times I would practice hypnosis on my kids when I was putting them to bed at night. And funny story, this is the only time it ever happened. One night I used some type of a water induction on the kids, where it was you're floating on a raft, and it's and I was using the analogy of the water and floating and drifting on the water. Excuse me. And my kid wet the bed that night. One time, my kids never wet the bed. There was only one time kids ever wet the bed. And it was that night that I was using a water analogy to practice hypnosis on them.
You have the sleep finger that you do in your act where they touch it.
Yeah.
If I could have done that to my son every night, sleep, oh my God, my life would have been so much better. I love it.
Oh my God, I could
Yeah,
talk to you
that's a fun
all
one.
day, John. This is not fair. I don't want this one.
I know.
I don't want this to end.
This has been great, though. John, thank you so much for making the time. This has been awesome. I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you for
Anything else you want to say or anything?
I just want to say thank you for having me because, obviously do a lot of these, podcasts. And you guys, you've got a great energy together. You guys,
Thank you.
come together really well, bounce off each other really well. And thank you for making this a great experience and a fun experience for
You're
me.
so
I
welcome.
appreciate
You're
it.
going to make me cry because I had dental work this morning and I thought that I was never going to be able to do this.
She's drugged up. It's fine. It's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to y'all soon.
And I'm tuning in to your channel. There's no doubt
Okay.
about it.
We'll be there. We'll sleep together.
Nice.
That's not one of your dirty jokes, is it?
No,
All right,
it's
be
not.
well.
That's the joke people use. Oh, I sleep with John Moyer.